Amanda.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching Madoka Magica Season 1, Episode 9. Is Sayaka dead? Is Sayaka a witch? Is Sayaka a familiar? Any bets? Any guesses? Any words to help me feel better?
Oh, I don't think I could easily come up with any words that would make you feel better. I think that I'm still, even though it's been a bit since we watched the last episode, I think I'm still in a state of shock over some of the things that transpired at the end of last episode.
Yeah.
Both with the scene with Sayaka in particular, but also Kyubei's last words at
Incubator,
the end of last episode.
Homura having time magic and not being from this timeline. Like it's
there was a lot from last episode, actually.
Yeah, like I would have expected if something so big that like what happened to Sayaka, that would have been like the only thing in the episode that would have been wanting to be speculated on or talked about. But one of the biggest info drops that we've had in this entire series so far was the revelation of what Kyubei seems to be, and more importantly what Homura seems to be, and what that means going forward.
Right.
I'm scared.
I am also pretty scared in terms of I'm feeling rather hopeless, I would say, in terms of saving Sayaka. We were told that Madoka, would be able to basically do anything she wished. She could be the god of this world. But we don't necessarily want her to become a magical girl now that we are learning so much more of the dark side of what that means in this series.
You ready?
I think so.
Sweet.
Oh, we see it again.
Anna, I think we're fucked. Kyoko, if you save Sayaka, I will never say a bad thing about you again.
The sound, it sounds like her. It's just a body.
Are you just holding a vessel?
You're just holding the... I think so.
Whew.
That's Sayaka. She's no longer in that body. Time?
Time stop? What the fuck?
Used to be Sayaka.
Needless baggage.
That literally is Sayaka now. This show is so greatly effed up for the fact that they have this like cute, happy, magical girl with their magical girl friends opening, and that they give us what they did at the beginning and then give us the opening.
Kyubei doesn't deserve to sleep on the bed.
I already feel like I'm gonna cry.
You know what? The only way Sayaka would have ever lost to Hitami in terms of Kamijo is if she was dead. That's my headcanon. I'd never allow that to happen.
I'm not ready.
I'm not happy. I'm gonna see Sayaka's body.
Final secret of the soul gems. Then what's the point of the cycle? Every person she saved, she'll curse another.
わざわざ死体を持ってきた以上、扱いには気をつけて迂闊な場所に置き去りにすると後々厄介なことになるわ。てめえそれでも人間か。もちろん違うわ。あなたもね。
Wow.
You call yourself human? I don't, and neither should you.
入っていいかい？話があるんだ。
I don't want to talk to you.
小村ちゃんが言ってたこと本当なの？訂正するほど間違ってはいないね。
That I can't protest it.
Ugh.
Obvious that Kyubey wouldn't want her to know.
僕らは何も人類に対して悪意を持っているわけじゃない。すべてはこの宇宙の寿命を伸ばすための。
Prolonging the life of the universe.
君はエントロピーっていう言葉を知ってるかい？だから僕たちは熱力学の法則に縛られないエネルギーを探し求めてきた。そうして見つけたのが魔法少女の魔力だよ。僕たちの文明は知的生命体の感情をエネルギーに変換するテクノロジーを発明した。
The emotions.
ところがあいにく当の僕らが感情というものを持ち合わせていなかった。
That makes a lot of sense.
様々な一族を調査し
Studied various species across.
Don't show me the fucking chairs, you monster.
君たちの魂はエントロピーを覆すエネルギー源あり得るんだよ。とりわけ最も効率がいいのは第二次成長期の少女の希望と絶望の想定員だ。ソウルジェムになった君たちの魂は燃え尽きてグリーフシードへと変わるその瞬間に膨大なエネルギーを発生させる。それを回収するのが僕たちインキュベーターの役割だ。私たち消耗品なの？あなたたちのために死ねっていうの？その時になって枯れ果てた宇宙を引き渡されても困るよね。長い目で見ればこれは君たちにとっても得になる取引のはずだよ。
That not showing emotion, right? Not being able to fucking feel anything.
僕たちはあくまで君たちの合意を前提に契約しているんだよ。それだけでも十分に良心的なはずなんだが。みんな騙されてただけじゃない。騙すという行為自体僕たちには理解できない。
Makes you feel like they've heard that before.
判断ミスを後悔するとき、なぜか人間は他者を憎悪するんだよね。今現在で69億人。しかも4秒に10人ずつ増え続けている君たちがどうして単一個体の生き死にでそこまで大騒ぎするんだい？君たちの犠牲がどれだけ素晴らしいものをもたらすか理解してもらいたかったんだが、いつか君は最高の魔法少女になり、そして最悪の魔女になるだろう。
And then the wickedest of all witches.
大量のエネルギーを手に入れるはずだ。
Fucking hell.
宇宙のために死んでくれる気になったらいつでも声を。
Do you ever feel like dying for the sake of the universe?
こいつのソウルジェムを取り戻す方法は僕の知る限りではないね。そいつはお前が知らないこともあるって意味か？魔法少女は条理を覆す存在できるんだな。前例はないね。
No
だから
precedent
僕
for
に
it.
も方法はわからない。いらねえよ。誰がてめえの手助けなんか借りるもんか。まどかさん、今朝は顔色が優れませんわ。大丈夫ですの？
I wonder what Kamijo and her actually talked about.
それにしても今日のさやかさんはお休みかしら。後でお見舞いに行くべきでしょうか。昨日の今日でのんきに学校なんて行ってる場合かよ。まどかさん、ちょっと話があるんだ。顔貸してくれる？ひとみちゃん、ごめん、今日は私も学校をお休みするね。え、そんな、まどかさん、ちょっと。
Whoa.
話ってミキさやか助けたいと思わない？
Is that on the table? We're thinking maybe.
No
助け
precedent
られ
for
ないと
it.
したら放っとくか。私はね、本当に助けられないのかどうか、それを確かめるまで諦めたくない。あいつは魔女になっちまったけど、友達の声ぐらいは覚えてるかもしれない。呼びかけたら人間だった頃の記憶を取り戻すかもしれない。それができるとしたら多分あんただ。わかんないからやるんだよ。もしかしてあの魔女を真っ二つにしてやったらさ、中からグリーフシードの代わりにさやかのソウルジェムがポロッと落ちてくるとかさ、そういうもんじゃん。 最後に愛と勇気が勝つストーリーってのは私だって考えてみたらそういうのに憧れて魔法少女になったんだよね。さやかはそれを思い出させてくれた。手伝う。
So we're gonna be okay with this.
私、要まどか。たくもう調子狂うよな、ほんと。さくら京子だ。よろしくね。
Why do I feel like she found a way to pay for the food that she got?
After what Sayaka said. Do you think Hitomi's gonna, like, venture out?
We did get to see her reacting.
Nah, she's not that kind of person. Do we get some exposition? Okay.
A reoccurring witch.
Who was it? Which magical girl?
Someone that would have been similar to Madoka, I bet. The greatest magical girl would make the greatest, wickedest of witches. I feel like Kyoko could lose her life trying to fight Sayaka. Love me?
Damn.
京子ちゃん。なんであんたが魔法少女になるわけさ。なんでって。毎日うまいもん食って幸せ家族に囲まれてそんな何不自由ない暮らしをしてるやつがさ。
Homura said something similar when we first met her.
になろうとするんならそんなの私が許さない。胃の一番にぶっ潰してやるさ。命を危険にさらすってのはな。そうするしか他に仕方ないやつだけがやることさ。
Wow.
あんただっていつかは。嫌が王でも命がけで戦わなきゃならない時が来るかもしれない。その時になって考えればいいんだよ。
If you ever feel like dying for the sake of the universe.
Look at all the posters for the fucking concert. Whoa. Oh, memories. This is fucked up. Whoa!
She doesn't want to give up.
Oh, wow. Oh. Kamijo?
足手まといを連れたまま戦わない主義だろ。ただ一つだけ守りたいものを最後まで守り通せばいい。なんだかな。私だって 今までずっとそうしてきたはずだったのに。行きな。こいつは私が引き受ける。心配すんなよ、さやか。一人ぼっちは寂しいもんな。いいよ、一緒にいてやるよ、さやか。京子。さくら京子には本当に三木さやかを救える望みがあったの。まさかそんなの不可能に決まってるじゃないか。どうしてあの子を止めなかったの？もちろん無駄な犠牲だったら止めただろうさ。でも今回彼女の脱落には大きな意味があったからね。これでもう
fucked up thing to say.
立ち向かえる魔法少女は君だけしかいなくなった。
Which means you might need Madoka.
この町を守るためにはマドカが魔法少女になるしかないわけだ。
Okay, that was Madoka Magica, Season 1, Episode 9. I apologize for ever saying a single bad thing about Kyoko. That meant everything to me.
I had a feeling.
That picture at the credits?
Okay, yeah, that's what pushed my emotions over, the floodgates finally opened at that point, that like artwork was shown at the end of Kyoko and Sayaka. I had a feeling that she was going to be a really good character. She wasn't going to be the villain of the story, but she was an antagonist for a short bit, and someone being an antagonist doesn't mean they're always going to be a villain or a bad person in the story. And I really do enjoy stories that have characters like that, have a character where it's more so circumstantial, that they are on an opposite end from you and that you are at an opposition with each other. They are not necessarily evil or the perpetrator of like the greatest problem in the narrative, but depending on your choices lining up and matching up with theirs, at sometimes they will be, an antagonist. And I really like characters that there is that ability for them to, it makes them feel more real, like they are a more fleshed out character that has their own kind of personality and moral compass, because it's real to have different opinions with someone else, where some things you might match up on in your ways of thinking or your values and others you wouldn't. And so I really love characters that you can be mad at them for certain aspects or things that they do, but that doesn't make them a bad person or that they're always going to be antagonizing the main character. It's
the idea of growth, right? Or change in a character, that change in characters or development within characters doesn't necessarily even come within changing worldviews. It can come within understanding context and trying to understand someone better. Mm-hmm. But I feel like shows that release, like there are a lot of TV shows or movies that release today that some people find it difficult to ever introduce a character not in the most positive light and make them redeemable. Obviously, I hated Kyoko forever being like, I'm gonna kill you, Sayaka. Mm-hmm. And that's not outside of my love for Sayaka, she didn't actually kill Sayaka in cold blood there, Mm-hmm. But because of that, the way that we were introduced to Kyoko, it just means the absolute world that this was how it ended for her. And I hate that it wasn't the case. I hate that it feels like part of it was robbed because that hope that Kyoko was holding on to, even though she probably herself would be the first to say that there was a 0% chance of saving Sayaka. It was still told to her by Kyubey that he didn't know what was possible and not possible. And then it was twisted at the end and talking to Homura of like, oh yeah, there was no chance, you know? It's just like the specific phrasing. I hate that was the case, but I loved what Kyoko did. I loved it so much.
I think that this will probably be in one of my favorite kind of endings of a character, or possibly killing a character off in a show, would be what happens with Kyoko. But I think that it's more so a marriage between killing off Sayaka and Kyoko that has been the most beautiful in terms of the writing. Sayaka is, to Kyoko, facing her past, facing why she became what she became, facing the fallout of becoming that thing, but also then through Sayaka and interacting with her, learning about the truth of what she really is, even more so than she could have ever imagined. Realizing that father that she did something for, that she made a contract for, who ended up cursing her as if she was a witch, and then finding out that is true and can come to fruition, and deciding to just end Sayaka's suffering and hers, I guess, at the same time, just taking her out, but also being with her. Like, I'm not gonna leave you alone. That's what you were scared of, is being alone. Like,
I mean, the idea of like what we know Kyoko to have done to make the wish that she did, like the place that it came from was never anything malicious, and just wanting to have people understand and listen to what she deemed as like a good advice for the world from her dad. It was a story of like courage triumphing, right? And then through Sayaka's, you know, dialogue with Kyoko and their conflicts, Kyoko this episode said that it'd be like one of those stories where love and courage triumph over all if they managed to save Sayaka. And through talking and dealing with this through Sayaka, it made her realize that that's the story that she used to love. That's I loved it.
She was, honestly, it's really interesting to know that they were chosen as at this time period in their lives, because they're in such a time period of fluctuation between hope and despair. I'm sure we'll get to dialogue, but sorry, you start. I was like thinking about that line, and then we clicked off it, so I got a little like, ooh, what was I talking about?
Gotcha. Did you want to move on to a different point then?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of like Homura's first interpretation of when they brought Sayaka's body out and showed Madoka, and Madoka saying like that she wanted to fight for justice. This is why she wanted to be a magical girl. Why did this happen? And Sayaka had this line. It said it could only last until she had suffered an amount equal to the good she had wished for. That is such a fucking bar of...
It is like the monkey's paw, as we've talked about. Like,
yeah.
There needs to be a balance in the universe.
It like, I wonder how much truth there is within that. Like, we're taking thermodynamics into the equation, and upon doing that with our conversation a little later with Kyubey, I had looked at this conversation again in a different light, because my first interpretation of hearing Homura say this was like almost like a poetic speculation of what it means to be a magical girl versus the wish that you made. But then when it comes into Kyubey talking about what this is as an energy source, it gives that equal exchange type of impression that I don't doubt it potentially being this specific.
But in a way, it's also not an equal exchange for what it is doing for the world or for the universe. I mean, to Kyubey, it's a couple people out of over, was it 6 million or 6 billion? One of those people, that only a handful would die for the sake of the powering, like, for the universe. There's not a balance there but to a human, it's like, but you're killing like people with lives. But to the alien that doesn't have a concept of that, they're like, this is an overwhelming amount of good that's being done in comparison to the bad.
Yeah. It's just like a statistic pitch. Like, you know, what will Q4 look like in 5 years from now?
I think it's interesting that Kyubey did want to kind of come and have some type of truthful conversation with Madoka. And the idea of misunderstandings being the word that Kyubey uses is like such a common human occurrence that the incubators were never purposefully trying to trick the humans, that it all boils down to misunderstandings that then breed resentment. And we can know that from the fact that when we've kind of proposed questions to Kyubey doesn't lie. Kyubey tells the truth, but you just have to pose the right question. You just have to ask the exact question will get you all of the truth and all of the answers. They're not going to just fork it up.
I don't know. I think I would have said that before Kyubey talks to Homura at the end of the episode. Because, like, my impression of Kyubey is, like, okay, doesn't understand human emotion. Therefore, he's not lying. Like what you're saying, you'd have to ask him a specific question. He's going to be cold with you and real with you. But then through talking to Kyubey, it's like, okay, we get the understanding that he has a line that I'm sure we'll get to if we just let it play about how, like, other people have reacted in a similar way. And I think that goes into his logic of how he's going to decide to tell people. I think he's deceiving. Like, I think he's deceptive. And I think that's borderline lying. Like, even though he has that cold truth, what he says to Homer at the end of the episode about, like, there was a drastic change of what he said to Kyoko about the potential of Sayaka being brought back versus how he explained it to Homura.
But is that more so coming from a place as humans who easily make their own assumptions and understandings based off of what people say to them? What I heard in his conversation with Kyoko was there's no he even repeated it. There's no precedent for it. I could not advise you on this. Yes. And she asks him, are there things you don't know? And he said, yes.
Yeah.
And she's like, so this could be one of those things you don't know. And he's like, yes.
Yeah.
So he is answering truthfully.
But
and I wouldn't say deceptively he wouldn't think he's being deceptive. It's in how the human is understanding it and assuming and
I think
twisting it
that if you have a
desires.
bias and you are going to use word choice to make sure that your bias has a more favorable outcome, that is deception.
Maybe, but wouldn't Kyoko also have a bias in that conversation? If she's in a hopeful state looking for hope, isn't she then going to hear what he says there as a glimmer of hope? And that's on her.
I think that was taken advantage of. I think that's why Kyubey worded it in that way.
And I'm trying to say that we're being shown that it's another example of humans doing it to themselves in terms of being given something and then how they interpret it or what they're looking for, what their bias is, whatever they're looking or seeking for, they are finding it in whatever is being said to them. Not that it's being curated for them in a way in hopes, because if Kyubey doesn't work with human emotions, that means and Kyubey even said, I have no concept of what it is to trick someone. So with that in mind, then Kyubey is not purposefully offering a platter that is curated in a specific way for Kyoko to interpret it in a specific way.
I think let's read a couple lines and then revisit it, okay? Because there's a line that I don't have like a quote for in my notes that I want to see if we can find. So this is between Madoka and Kyubey's conversation. Everything we've done is for the sake of prolonging the life of the universe. Madoka, do you know what the word entropy means? To give a simple example, the amount of heat energy a bonfire gives off is not equal to the energy it took to grow the wood that it took to make it. In short, when energy changes form, some of it gets lost. As a result, the amount of usable energy in the universe is decreasing. So, we began searching for a form of energy that wasn't bound by the laws of thermodynamics. and what we found was the power of the magical girls. Madoka asks, "What are you?" to Kyubey. Kyubey says her civilization created technology that could convert the emotions of a sentient life form into raw energy. Unfortunately, our species does not possess the capacity to experience emotion, so we studied various species throughout the universe. Until finally, we found humans. They show us the chairs, which feels like it's being twisted. With the size of your population and the rate of your reproduction, the amount of emotional energy produced by a single human is greater than the amount used between its birth and growth. Are we just disposable supplies for you then? Human souls truly are the energy source that could counter entropy. Then he has, I'm pretty sure he hasn't said it yet. And the most effective of all girls in the second stage of development, who experience the greatest fluctuations of happiness and despair. In the moment when your soul gems flare out and turn into grief seeds, enormous energy is created. It is the job of the incubators to collect that energy. We always ask and receive your consent before making the contract. Are we just disposable supplies for you then? Are you saying we should die for you? Why is it that when humans regret a decision, it has to be coming up. Even you human. Okay, when that day comes, you wouldn't want to find the universe empty and desolate once the humans are able to reach that. If you look at it in the long run, this should be a good deal for your benefit as well as like humanity itself, right? Don't be ridiculous. How can you say it for mommy to die, Sayaka? We always ask and receive your consent before making the contracts. It's like within this, we aren't able to comprehend what you mean by tricking. Why is it that when humans regret a decision based on a misunderstanding, they feel resentment towards the other party? It's increasing the rate.
It's robotic.
I agree.
And I think if you don't have a concept, it's what we're talking about here is what humans do with what is being given to them, how they interpret things, how they convert things to fit their desires and their means. You're offering them a contract, you're getting them to say yes, but then as soon as they regret, I love that line of like, why is it that as soon as a human regrets something is when they almost blame the other party as if the other party tricked them. I love that idea.
I agree, and I think that it comes from the emotionalist and non-human understanding that Kyubey has. But what I think brings that into a contextual conversation of what we were just talking about was when Homura says at the end of the episode, was there really any chance for Kyoko to save Sayaka? Of course not. She should have known that was impossible. And then why didn't you stop her? Naturally, I would have stopped her if her death had been needless, but getting her out of the picture served a very important purpose.
Okay.
Because now there's no one left but you to battle Walpurgisnacht. It's like, within that cold, non-human understanding, Kyubey as an incubator looks at it logistically, and the sacrifice of leading Kyoko down the wrong path would lead to a greater potential for more energy to be produced by inevitably having Madoka become a magical girl.
Okay. I wasn't thinking about that line at the time, but you're right. It does kind of lead more to Kyubey not just flat out saying that there was no chance. Obviously, Kyoko didn't ask, is there a chance that I could?
Yeah.
I think she just asks a more broad question of, is there a chance that Sayaka could be saved? And to Kyubey, it's like, well, I've already told Madoka could basically do anything that's even impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that answer would be, there's no precedent for it. It might not be impossible. But for the question to then be more specific, as Homura asks it, of could Kyoko have saved Sakura? Then it's like, oh, well, Kyoko couldn't have.
Yeah. And let's read the dialogue between Kyoko and Kyubey, right? Is there a way to get her? Because it's that line of like, I was reluctant to even say Kyubey lied, but it's close to that when you consider deception based off of biases, right? Then it's like semantics and philosophies that you're arguing. Is there a way to get her soul gem back? None as far as I know anyway. Truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's stuff even you don't know, huh? The existence of magical girls defies logic as it is, so I wouldn't be surprised no matter what kinds of impossible feats you manage to accomplish. So it's possible. It's like him decide, like what he said there wasn't a lie, but the decision to say that then, I think, was him taking a step and pushing into pushing Kyoko to do something that he is pretty certain will end in her death.
Right, okay. So I wasn't remembering that line with Homura about how favorable it would be if Kyoko was out of the picture.
What it would do for
when
him.
we started this discussion.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not... I wasn't thinking about that line. It's snowing outside.
It's snowing
I got a little
outside.
sidetracked. That's really exciting. I absolutely adore snow. I wasn't thinking about that line.
Yeah,
It was completely not in my mind. I mean, there was a lot of emotions running through my mind at the end of this episode, but that specific line where he talks about how favorable it is and why he didn't stop Kyoko, I can see how that would totally show that there is a bit of manipulation there.
Potentially,
in terms of,
right?
Potentially. And it's hard because I'm stuck between wanting... Because also we are humans, so we're approaching this from a place where we ourselves as viewers interpret dialogue.
Yeah.
In whatever way we want to, or we're
already
see
biased.
it, and it's always going to be probably sometimes different from each other because we're different people. And so there really is a good conversation here of like how much of it is how specific the question is versus was he trying or hoping or taking advantage of the fact that humans will interpret things in a certain way. But then what's the difference between why wouldn't he just lie there? Is it just because he doesn't have the capacity to understand tricking, he wouldn't have the capacity to lie?
Yeah.
I don't know if that is...
Like even saying I don't have the capacity to understand lying and how and that, I feel like even bringing that into the equation is somewhat predatory to the person you're talking to, because then they're operating in a different set of circumstances. Like, oh, so then there probably wouldn't be a bias then,
Right.
even though that could be like...
This is so, like, brain...
Yeah.
This is so funky to, like, try to think about because... Yes, you're, like, approaching it as a person with feelings and emotions. I'm not an incredibly logical person, and I'm trying to understand this creature that's approaching things...
That is an alien.
Logically, that's also an alien that I have to remind myself is not capable of human emotions, and can you hold someone or something like that to the standards that are created and values that are created within our society? How do you... it opens up the question of, if there really was aliens in this world and other creatures, we are not going to be on the same page.
Very true.
We are not. Like, when humans and whatever else is out there are not going to see eye to eye on every single thing. And this show is definitely proving that a little bit more for me, that it's just not possible that we would all think the same. When you look at another human, we don't all think the same.
Yeah.
We all approach things with our own
I think
biases.
It's fascinating, though, and interesting to think about it from the point of view of Kyubey, not as Kyubey, but of Kyubey's civilization and what their desire was here. They've already discovered a way to get energy in a form that they've deemed over a certain period of time it is a net positive. There's nothing wrong about it. Now, from that point of view, from the it's right, because it's going to give us the energy we need, it makes sense, and it's a benefit for both parties. Think about the process that they've gone about, right? It's like when you talk about like renewable energy or a resource, I'm thinking about how endless this energy source is for Kyubey. So
Really
hypothetically, you have Madoka, who apparently has the most potential to be the strongest magical girl out of anybody. Now, hypothetically, Madoka accepts, becomes a magical girl. What's the best thing Madoka could do as a magical girl? In my opinion, that would be to get rid of every witch in the world. Now, if that is what Madoka did, great. But what does Madoka need in order to not become a witch herself? Grief seeds. If all of the witches are gone, and there are no grief seeds left to obtain, it's only a matter of time or inevitable for Madoka to become a witch herself, which lets Kyubey step in, offer other girls the chance to be magical girls, and the entire process would be looping for an infinite amount of time.
And we can, as informed as we are from this episode, can surmise that Walpurgis Gnat was once a Madoka Kaname. Was once someone who could be the most powerful magical girl in the world, probably a similar personality, similar value type of person that wanted to just thought it would be so beautiful to be able to be the type of person that could save people and have the power to save people. And that person is the one that would become someone who's not just making a wish for themselves, but wants to put themselves into pain and suffering in order to save people.
Yeah.
And that is their wish.
Where did we get Homura talking about how often Walpurgis Gnat happens in this episode?
I'm not exactly sure where that happened.
I was trying to see if it came before the last conversation with Kyubey, because it feels like it did, but I don't know if I have any recollection of Homura talking to anybody else about Walpurgis Gnat this episode. Let's see. No, this is Kyubey and Madoka. They didn't talk about Walpurgis Gnat, right?
Mm-mm.
I can't follow what you're saying. I feel like dying for the sake of the universe. Then we go into Kyoko's conversation, which is then Madoka and Kyoko. It doesn't seem like it seems like that would be the only case. But I think the idea of a witch only appearing every so often, because didn't we get, what was it this episode that was saying that like it's the same witch? Walpurgis Gnat's like a reoccurring thing that happens, and it's the same being.
I can't remember where that happened, but that is what we were told.
Yeah.
Is that this same witch comes here or to different locations. And we have heard in the past that this would be the first time they have appeared here.
Yeah. Why do you think it would be able to, like, why wouldn't it be around all the time? Why would it only come so often? If, like, under the guise that it was a magical girl at one point, right? Like, why would it only come a certain amount of times?
Maybe it bops around all over, and that's why you only hear about it coming to certain places. Maybe it's dormant until there is the possibility of a stronger opponent or a stronger ability to create or wreak havoc. I'm very unsure, like, because you'd think a witch would have lost any kind of control in terms of planning, and that they would just be there to wreak havoc and create suffering and not leave until disposed of. So the concept of it being able to leave and then come back is something that I can't truly understand.
Kyoko Madoka. It's this insanely huge and powerful witch. Probably neither of us could beat it alone in terms of her and Homura. That's why we decided to team up. That's basically how it is. That's all we really get about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're dealing with time at all, I don't have any logic for it. Is it at all plausible that Madoka is Walpurgis Gnat? Like, or like...
Well, she would be the next.
Yeah, but like the future Madoka that would become a witch would somehow be back in time here or some fucked up...
Oh, it'd be an interesting... If Walpurgis Gnat's disappearing, what if Walpurgis Gnat's going to different
timelines? Yeah.
That's an interesting idea or concept.
But it makes it, like, how it's referenced within world, it makes it feel like Kyoko knows about it and it's happened since in this world too. I'm not sure.
We're not going with different worlds. We're going with time.
Yeah.
So it could still have, if it's time travel, it still could have appeared 10 years ago and Kyoko would have heard about it.
True. God, the idea of another magical girl with the same or close potential to Madoka is terrifying. Like, think about how much of a difference it is. We see, like, how big of a witch Sayaka becomes. And Sayaka's fucking strong. And, like, how massive that gap must be.
Right. I think that Kyoko kind of touches on a little bit why Sayaka's witch form is actually strong. Even though we've been told through Kyubei to Sayaka that Sayaka was kind of like the loser in comparison to even Mami, not having any natural talent or knack for it wouldn't be a Madoka. But what Sayaka had is the comeback attitude. Like, she was going to consistently fight and consistently get back up. And there's something that you can't recreate. You can't like create a fake courage. Like, the courage was always in her. That's not something that can just be fabricated.
Yeah.
And I feel like that transcended into her witch form, that she would just be more resilient.
We almost get like a look at what looks like Kami Joe once we fall through, right? It definitely is, in my opinion, like at least a silhouette.
It's like she's keeping a memory of him to herself. Like,
what was written on the floor in the heart when we first were coming in?
It was like, "Love me do" or something.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Love me do.
Yeah, and then like an emoticon. That love for maybe Kami Joe. Dude.
And we don't even know what Kami Joe and Hitomi actually talked about. We don't know if they started dating. We don't know anything. And the fact that what happened here is all from the fear and the assuming. Sayaka assumed that Hitomi, since she was beautiful, that Kami Joe would love her. And it all comes from just like how I love the idea of the fluctuations of like this age of girls, but it really is just like people in general. Crazy how she could fall this far on just something her mind creates as a possibility. She doesn't even give the chance to find or hear the truth of how Hitomi and Kami Joe's conversation went. She immediately is like, no, he wouldn't want me because I am now this corpse and I couldn't kiss him. But then she's also so much more focused on wanting to curse Hitomi as like being better than her and almost like taking away Kami Joe from her when she doesn't even have like Hitomi doesn't even have Kami Joe to begin with.
Yeah.
It's all just something that's being created within the mind, the spiraling.
Dude, Kyoko's like end ability here, making like a giant iteration of her weapon to stand on, was the fucking coolest thing I think I've seen in the show yet in terms of fighting. It's hard to beat Mami, or Sayaka for me, but this was so cool. But also it like brings up this point. They don't have to worry about Kyoko's body. Sayaka's body's in a room now, not being protected and kept alive or kept fresh from Kyoko's magic.
I didn't even think about that.
So Sayaka's body's just there. And then even in like talking about it, when Mami's body was lost inside of the labyrinth, we were like, fuck, it's just going to be a missing person. No one's going to even get to grieve. But that's not it. Like, it's a cold case and you're bringing the body to the cops at that point. It's almost like a fucked up blessing for the body to be taken away with the labyrinth, because if it isn't, then what, you have to dispose of your friend's body in a way that you can't tell anybody else about.
Like Homura said, like, you're gonna have to take care of that body or it's gonna create like more trouble or more issues. I did want to say something based on Sayaka's design and witch form. So Sayaka, when she turns into a magical girl, is knightly. You know, looks like this beautiful knight of a magical girl with a sword. And obviously, yes, the entire labyrinth itself is like a concert hall, but Sayaka as the witch doesn't resemble a conductor.
Mm-hmm.
She's the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah. She
is not only almost suit of armor, but then the behind is like the collar of like the Queen of Hearts. That is her design, and I don't remember exactly what the Queen of Hearts story is, but I believe it is similar to the idea of like having a love, someone that you loved, and then something happening with that person that you loved, whether someone stole, like a prettier person stole that person from the Queen of Hearts. I wish I could remember exactly what the story was, but I do believe that there's something there. Like, that's why the Queen of Hearts is, like, evil.
Yeah. Can I show you real quick my favorite scene this episode?
Yeah.
It's when they're fighting Sayaka's witch, and Kyoko says, "Oh, I get it. This is payback, isn't it? It's just too hard to let go." How funny. "We started off trying to kill each other too, didn't we? I thought you'd be a wuss," and then you get the silhouette of the all-blue Sayaka coming into frame, "but no matter how much I beat you up, you kept standing back," and then the red silhouette of Kyoko starts merging with it. It's so beautiful.
And it basically
Look at this.
becomes Kyoko's blood that she's bleeding.
Yeah. "No matter how much I beat you up, you kept standing back up." Oh. Wow. It's just too hard to let go right now. I get it. Once you've had enough, come back, okay? Kyoko is amazing.
None of them want to be alone. None of these girls are making these contracts that, without them really knowing, put them into a place of isolation and being alone, and that an inability to truly rely on anyone else, because it's almost like as soon as you care for someone, the inevitable of this circumstance that they're in is that they are just ticking time bombs on this, like, journey to become a witch. That's, like, the truth of it now, is that they aren't supposed to survive this long as they are. They're supposed to die and then curse others as they do so. I really liked the kind of showing of Kyoko taking on some of the talking points of Homura to Madoka. I think that was a really nice touch in this episode, if this was Kyoko's, like, send-off episode, especially when you're introducing her as the antagonist and having her come in as, like, even an opposition to Homura, and then starting to try to work together for one singular goal. It was nice to have Kyoko use that repetitive idea of, like, no, Madoka, like, if you love your life, if you love your family, like, you do not want to do this. Let the people who have no choice be the ones that fight. Like, you still have a choice at this point.
That emotional, like, I want to say, like, maturity, but just, like, the idea of perspective reminds me of what I loved so early on of Sayaka, you know? And I love that about Kyoko this episode. My last thing I wanted to say is that we talked about the idea that Homura's time magic might be limited, like, she wouldn't be able to utilize it if other people were involved, but she was able to do it this episode with Kyoko, like, by using time magic while holding on to her.
Right, that is really cool that there is an actual freezing of time. Is that, in trying to understand what the capabilities are of time magic, that would be just an example of it, right? That there's just one capability, one weapon that it can do is just freeze frame. That's super useful, but now going forward, it seems like what we saw at the very beginning of the series is about to come to fruition.
Does that set it in stone that we did just get a piece of footage that we haven't been able, like, our dream that Madoka had was actually what's going to come in front of us?
As a viewer, and I do not want Madoka to have to become at this point, you know, it's so crazy to go into a magical girl anime and be like, I don't want the main character to become a magical girl. No one said that ever until they watched this show, and we don't want that for her, because all of these other characters are looking out for her and being like, if you don't have to be doing this, don't do it. But with the great power that Madoka could have, couldn't it be possible, if she could be a god of this world, does that not give you any sort of feeling that maybe she could end it all?
Maybe, but I don't trust Kyubey. And that's who the information was given by. I'm not saying he lied, I just don't trust him.
I'm just gonna continue as my human brain does and take whatever he's given me and interpret it in whatever 5,000 ways I can interpret it, because somewhere in there is the truth.
My only like, I don't trust him. That comes from, I think he's going to be blatantly truthful and bluntly honest, as long as at the end of the day, it logically makes sense that this energy production will continue.
Mhm.
And if he thought Madoka could be capable of ending that energy production, I don't think he'd favor it.
But if the idea of magical girls even broke logic itself,
Yeah.
and Kyubey doesn't even truly understand how it works, then isn't it possible that this isn't the end-all be-all for powering the
Yes.
entire universe?
It is possible.
Kyubey's opening a door up for us to think that losing out on this magical girl witch cycle might not be, like, this might have just been, as in the real world, new inventions, new technologies. As Kyubey said, I'm from a group of creatures with certain technology, you know. We are always growing and developing new technologies, new ways, electricity, you know, new ways to power things from fuels. Madoka could very well be a key to creating something new in terms of a new way or a safer way to utilize human emotions in order to power the universe. I don't know exactly how that would work, but if Madoka is said to be so strong she could basically be the impossible,
Yeah.
or set the precedent, then I trust that Madoka will be setting the precedent. I just don't want to see her.
But then it's like,
become
why
a
would
magical
Homura
girl.
be so scared of it happening? Unless she knew something bad would come of it. But I think that it's like an endless, like, art, like we'll see, I guess.
Right.
But I had one question for you.
Okay.
Does the confirmation that even having a soul gem will inevitably put you in a place that you will become a wish do anything, or does that affect your desire to get a soul gem tattoo like you've been talking to me about for the last like 5 days straight?
No.
Okay.
I think that it fits. It's almost like a metaphor of like human nature.
Okay.
I think that I mean I'll definitely think about it, not more because of what I've seen from the show, but I think that as anyone getting tattoos, you should definitely think about them.
Yeah.
For a good amount of time, you know, make sure that, especially if it's from a work, if it's from an anime or a book or a series, you definitely need to give it a little more thought, because there could be something written for that series that hasn't come out yet that you're then, oop, now I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
So you do have to be a little bit more, you have to think about it a little bit more. But I think that the idea of the soul gem
Such a cool
is
idea.
more so just saying like how powerful human emotion is. And I think that everyone can, it's I think you need to have an awareness of the fragility of emotions and how quickly you can go as a person from hope to despair, not just as a young girl, you know, where they're so close to the fluctuations between. But I think that it could be really profound and powerful of an idea as a tattoo.
Cool.
I just have to think about it a little more.
All right, that's all I have, you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.